Earlier this year, 3 friends and I decided we should make a trek out to Colorado to check out Overland Expo Mountain West. None of us had ever been there before, and coming off a winter of being snowed in, it sure sounded like a wonderful idea. Now, we could have just made a beeline to Loveland, Colorado, but instead, we pointed our trucks west and headed to Colorado via the Badlands and the Black Hills. Our plan was to spend the first night camping just west of the Badlands, but before we got there, we had a lot of South Dakota to cross first. That meant stopping and topping off the fuel tanks just across the Minnesota border in Sioux Falls. If you've never had the privilege of driving across South Dakota, well, you're lucky. Now, it is a pretty state. It's pretty flat, the roads are pretty straight, and the miles and miles and hours of this view can get pretty boring. To be fair, there are other roads you can run that take you away from the tractor-trailer traffic and take you through some of South Dakota's interesting small towns. On a motorbike, that's the only way to go in my opinion. For making time crossing this wide open Great Plains state, you can't beat I-90. Since we had all done this section before and the kids were at home, we passed on seeing the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota, and set our sights on the middle of the state. Chamberlain, South Dakota is pretty much halfway across the state on I-90 along the Missouri River. The perfect place to fill up with gas and some highly recommended barbecue at the Smoky Mule. After a delicious brisket sandwich, we crossed over the Missouri River and kept moving west. We kept putting on the miles for a few more hours and eventually found ourselves in the Buffalo Gap National Grassland. We were finally going to be pulling off the interstate and exited south towards the town of Interior on the eastern side of the Badlands. I've been through the Badlands many times, but it never ceases to amaze me how wind, rain, and erosion has made this incredibly unique and beautiful area of South Dakota look otherworldly. Are we on the moon? Is this Mars? Nope, South Dakota. And seeing this area in the Black Hills at least once in your lifetime is definitely worth the trip. The day was getting late and it was time to find our campsite on the western edge of the Badlands. The campground we had in mind was on a first-come, first-served basis, and we were glad to see there were a few sites available when we arrived. Right away we could see we would have some little neighbors, but as long as the prairie dogs didn't play their music all night long, I was cool with that. It had been a long day of driving, and we were all pretty spent, so after supper and some sitting around the campsite, we called it a night. We were excited about tomorrow and hitting some of the fantastic roads and trails that the Black Hills had to offer.
Sunlight, dearest sunlight, I am calling you across the old room. Sunlight.
This area is buffalo country, and it was pretty neat to wake up and find this big fella grazing in the campsite. I understand that he's a common sight here, but that must have been a shock for those campers who woke up to find him enjoying the grass next to their tent. After some hot coffee, we said goodbye to our little neighbors, packed up, and made our way west out of the Badlands. It's going to be a morning filled with dust and dirt roads as we pointed our bumpers down the back roads towards Custer State Park.
Sunlight, dearest sunlight,
The route we were taking was meant to be away from the main roads and highways. The gravel roads were quite dusty, but worth it, taking us past magnificent fields of sunflowers and ranch land. If you've ever been to the Black Hills, you know there are 3 popular must-do roads, and today we were going to hit all 3. First up was Iron Mountain Road, which climbs up through the Black Hills National Forest, eventually spiraling its way down towards Mount Rushmore. Several of us had already been to the Mount Rushmore Monument, so we didn't plan to stop. We did enjoy the views of the presidents from the road, however, as we made our way to must-drive road number 2, Needles Highway. The wonderful views and the hairpin turns on Needles make it a fantastic road to drive. Pay attention though, as it gets narrow and you definitely won't be alone as traffic can be a bit heavy. It's all worth it though, just to see the eye of the needle and cross over the summit through the very narrow tunnel. The cathedral spires are another popular stopping point on this road. We just kept on descending, however, anxious to break free from all the other looky-loos. Once we finished up with Needles, we gassed up in Custer and made our way north. We were looking forward to the next stretch that was off the beaten path and would take us deeper into the Black Hills National Forest. This trail is known as China Gulch Road. I had seen it highlighted on offroadtrails.com, and it seemed like the perfect road to include on our trip. Let's just say it didn't disappoint. By this time of the day, I was a bit concerned about us making it all the way to the Devil's Tower in Wyoming. The day was slipping by, and we still had to hit the third must-drive road through Spearfish Canyon. After a bit of discussion, we decided the Devil's Tower was definitely doable, so we headed northwest out of the Black Hills and into Wyoming. It was a good hour drive to get there, and we arrived just as the sun was disappearing behind the tower. We took some photos, enjoyed the view, grabbed some patches, and made our way south to Keyhole State Park, hoping to find a campsite. The sunset was beautiful as we drove toward the campground. We were fortunate enough to discover we were the only ones in this particular portion of the park. After a day of crowded roads, it was nice to have some room to breathe and a quiet space to get a good night's rest. When the sun came back around, we woke up to a really beautiful morning. Today, we'd be heading to Loveland, and after looking at the weather forecast, we decided to pass on the backroads route through Wyoming's open ranch land. We had nearly 300 miles to get to the expo, and doing it creeping through greasy Wyoming mud wasn't sounding particularly fun. With that, we decided to make tracks on the highway and get to Loveland in a decent time. And with that, this is the perfect place to wrap up this video. Be sure to click the link in the description to check out my recap of Overland Expo Mountain West. We had an awesome time seeing all the displays and discovering what cool thing we had to buy next. I also hope you had an awesome time watching this video. Please give it a like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'm zooming in on 1,000 subs and I need your help to get there. Plus, I've got more videos coming up as we head into the Rocky Mountains, so you don't want to miss those. Thanks again for watching, and until the next one, I'll see you guys all down the road.